Yes.
Are you going to introduce our guest?
I can, yes, yes.
Good evening. I hereby call this special meeting of the Nacogdoches ISD Board of Trustees to order. Let a record show that a quorum is present, and notice of this meeting was legally posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Please join us in turning your cell phones to the silent mode. We did not receive any requests to address the board as outlined in the meeting notice. If you wish to speak at a future meeting, please refer to the instructions on the meeting notice. We've got one item, it's not an action item, on the agenda tonight. It is a governance team, board and superintendent training and development. I'd like to kick this over to our superintendent to introduce our guest tonight.
Speak this up. President Finch and board, so excited that we're coming together this evening to spend the next 3 hours together with this team building. I am tremendously honored to introduce to you Esperanza Orozco. She is with TASB and is a trainer, and she will tell you a little bit about herself, but she comes with a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge for the training today. So if you'll join me in welcoming Esperanza here with us this evening. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. My name is Esperanza Orozco. I'm a TASB board consultant. I also am a teacher. I taught for 11 years, bilingual certified teacher, and also union president for 7 years of the district that I currently sit as a board member. So I too am an active board member. I'm on my 6th year and running for re-election right now. So I'm going through that campaign process as well. And so that's a little bit about me and what I do. So certified teacher, union leader, been in the trenches. I have served as president for 2 years, vice president for 2 years. So I do have that officer experience. And I currently run our officer academy for TASB that I have partnered with David Koppel, who some of you might know. I have partnered with him, and I'm taking over that board officer academy. So I'm constantly training board officers in their duties and their roles. So I'm glad to be here with you today. And today we're going to start off with something that we're trying, that might be a little new to folks, but really when you think about it, it's going to be familiar. So we're going to start, before we get started with that activity, we're going to start with, if you can please share your name, how many years on the board, and why did you decide to run? So those 3 things. And I know you all know each other, but I want to hear a little bit about you so I know exactly who I'm working with, right? So we'll start over here.
All right, well, thank you. My name is Pam Fitch. This is my 6th and final year on the board, and I'm delighted a couple of the candidates that are running for the seat are here today. So I appreciate their sitting in on this team of 8 training to begin to kind of understand the board dynamics. Why did I decide to run? You know, it is extremely important to me that our community do everything we can to support a good education, a good public education for all of our kids in town. And I'm not saying that we weren't doing that. I'm saying that I felt like at the time it was time for, I'm going to say, a mama bear to come to the table to bring a fresh perspective in. And I'm very proud of what this board has done over the last 6 years and accomplished, and it's been a very much an honor and a privilege to serve.
Thank you.
I am Mindy Winslow, and this is my 4th year, my 2nd term. So why did I decide to run? I could probably repeat a lot of what Pam said, but I do know at the time that I decided to throw my hat in the ring, there were things that were concerning to me, and some of it was the instability of some leadership and things of that nature in our district. And I decided rather than complain about it, I should roll my sleeves up and get dirty and go be a part of the change or the solution. And That's it. And like Pam, I'm very excited to see where we are today as a board, and with our administration and our relationships with them.
Very good, thank you.
James Irvin, 9 years, election year for me as well. We wanted to run to continue to help the people in our community because we were always receiving the lowest scores. And we wanted to see what we could do to help raise the academic level of our community. So it's been a challenge, but we're making progress.
Anything is possible, right?
Absolutely.
I will add, on a side note, we went from being a very dysfunctional district and board, and we turned it around. And this past year, we were named top 5 honor boards in the state of Texas. So with new leadership and with the board members working cohesively, we were able to take it from having all these IR campuses and almost getting taken over in one of those campuses by the state to being recognized for our achievement and our growth. So anything is possible, right?
Absolutely.
And so just wanted to share a little tidbit with you. Dr. Trujillo, talk about how long you've been here.
Sure.
And why you picked Nacogdoches.
Okay, well, Gabriel Trujillo. Let me tell you, my wife, I love my wife to death. The board knows this. It's all about my family. We'll be celebrating 34 years of marriage, and I've got 3 beautiful kids. And we're empty nesters. And so there's a couple of things that was very, very intriguing about Nacogdoches. One is my predecessor. A lot of respect for the interim that was sitting here with Alton Fraley and the work that he had done, and his reputation in the past. I had known him for a lot of years and followed him as a superintendent, and he came in to Nacogdoches and had done a tremendous job. Just to tell you a side note, when you're in an interim, how do you pass a bond? I mean, it doesn't happen. So it's the conversation and getting that and building that rally of direction. The other is, it's a perfect opportunity to come in and work with a variety of leaders that are coming new. I was a new superintendent. They had a fairly new university president. They have a new city manager coming on board. The Education Service Center Executive Director, Todd, was coming in new. So when you have new leadership coming in, there's a lot of opportunity of going together in one direction. I constantly tell the board as we have our conversation is one team, one goal. And the great Michael Jordan put it best, Coach. He said it this way. He said, talent can win games. Talent can win games. But teamwork and strategy wins championships. And we're about winning championships. There's a lot of talent in this organization. And all we got to do is put the talents all together, create teamwork, create strategy, and we got championships. And that's really what I'm about, and I'm excited about the work that's before us here in Nacogdoches. And I'm a big cheerleader everywhere I go. I'm trying to make sure people understand what's going on in Nacogdoches and be a great spokesperson. So that's me and why I came and what I'm about. So.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes.
My name is Leah Beth Apt, and I have been on the board for 2 years. I have 1 more year, and I came to Trio. And I came after having been retired for a few years as a teacher. I worked here at NISD for 20 years. And I decided to run because as a teacher, for for the 20 years that I was a teacher, the attitude was primarily us, them. And particularly the last few years of my teaching and when I retired, before Trujillo came, we had a lot of problems here. And when I was teaching, it was just shut the door and let me teach, and I wouldn't get involved at all. I knew that there were a lot of good things going on. Both my daughters graduated from NISD and had grandchildren going here as well. But I felt like I could give a teacher's perspective of things, and didn't realize that it wouldn't be as needed with Dr. Trujillo, because he has been at every level, which is a rare thing in leadership. But that has helped us tremendously. But I just put my 2 cents in.
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm Dr. Grumman. I've been on the board 4 years, same as Mindy.
I was like,
And I was going to bring some light to something that you said. How did you do that when you're an interim? Well, ask Les. Les, he did 41, Dr. Fraley did 41 huddles. Is that right?
On the bond election?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were
40-something.
40-something meetings.
Okay, I went to 14, and I thought I'd done them all, but when there's all over, I realized that I didn't get to half of them. So that's a man on a mission. So why did I run? Well, I can go into a lot of details, but basically to advocate for teachers and students. And one of the things in the dysfunction of this was, I can't even say how dysfunctional it was, because I've done 16 years on the board at East Texas Baptist, and even as Baptists, we can get along better than they could. So the other reason, besides that, is I knew the way to the best and fastest and the most long-lasting, enduring way to fix our problem of dysfunction is to find the right superintendent for this place. And you know, this board right here, we did that, right? We did that.
Don't look at me.
And no, but you came on and supported that. And so I think that we have a lot to be thankful for, but the main thing is that we have built, each one of us is a builder, each one of us has built something that's very, very special to me.
Thank you. Sir?
I'm James Montoya, and I've been on the board 5 years. I have 1 year left. I've served as vice president 2 terms and secretary 1 term. Why did I decide to run? I'm a former employee of NISD. I worked for 13 years with NISD, and in that period, we had 5 different superintendents. And deciding to run for this board, I talked to a lot of people in the community, and especially in my precinct, and you know, they encouraged me. They said, you know, I'm a social worker by trade, so I see things in a very global perspective. But I felt like I needed to run because I wanted to see some change. I wanted to see some progression. I wanted our students to get the best education possible. And I think this board has worked very hard to do that. And it helps when you have a superintendent that's got his heart in the same place. And that's one of the reasons why I've stuck it out with this board, because he has his heart in the same place that we all do, and that's what's in best for the kids. We can agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, we're going to do what's right for our kids. And, you know, I think it's been a good experience. You know, we've had our ups and downs, but as a board, I think we're a team. We do the things that we need to do. And, you know, it helps when we had other coaches on the NISD and, you know, at LEBES. So we understand the other side of what we're trying to do here. And I hope that whoever comes on the board, new members, you know, feel that they can be part of our team and go in the direction. Because, man, I'll tell you, when I first got on the board, it was not fun. I saw a gentleman today, and he told me he was a former employee of the district, an administrator, and he says, "Thank you for doing a thankless job." And I said, I don't see it as thankless. I see it as we progress, we're getting forward, and we're going what we need to be doing. So I don't see it as a thankless job, because there's a lot of good things that come.
That's right. Sir?
My name is Farshid Nirvand, and this is my 5th year. And the reason I ran for school board, I worked with the public school for 36 years, all in Nacogdoches. And during those years, I realized that, especially toward the very end, there was a lot of uncertainty, exactly what these people said. A lot of good teachers were leaving. A lot of our good students were going to the county schools. And at the same time, I see a lot of our graduates out in the street. I decided to join to see what goes on behind the scene, and if I can make a change, I help. And here I am.
Very good. So all of you bring a different perspective. You have your own lens that you look through, right? whether it's your work experience, your area that you live in, your age. There's so many different components that make you different and make you special. And having all those different folks, having one shared vision, it's what makes us move forward, right? That's what makes your district move forward. And that's what we learn, to appreciate those differences. But you have to have a solid foundation of trust in order to build upon that. So one of the things that we did to improve our district was we implemented a social contract. So today we're going to talk about building a social contract. What is a social contract? Well, for some of you that have taught, it's very similar to having classroom rules, right? You have these rules in your classroom, but the way that they're stated is walk in a straight line, no running, no hitting, that kind of thing. But with a social contract, it's a little more, right? It's talking about expectations of ourselves and expectations of each other and verbalizing that. For so long, we kind of assume how you want to be treated, but we should not assume those things. And no longer do we have that golden rule of treat others how you want to be treated, because now we have the platinum rule, right? About you treat people how they want to be treated, because everyone is different. And we have to be cognizant of that. So this social contract verbalizes that, you have that discussion, and it cements how you should be working together as a team. We often have these expectations of our students, but we need to have those expectations of ourselves as well. You all are the prime example, right? You're the example for the community, you're an example for the employees, you're an example for the students. And basing your relationship on trust helps you move forward. So building a social contract is what we're going to be working on today. What is a social contract, right? Well, a social contract is that foundation for good governance. When you look at a social contract, it's telling you we should be unified, we should have expectations, we should be accountable to ourselves and to each other. There's responsibility attached to that. Because you are representing the community, you have a huge responsibility. And again, we want to formalize that, making sure that we're all on the same page about that and not just assume. So today, when we talk about a social contract, please know that this is how it can help your team, right? Setting those expectations. And I'm going to do a little side note right here. I remember one time when I first got on the board, I had a president tell me, Esperanza, you're not supposed to be doing that. And I'm like, really? Why not? Well, it's an unspoken, unwritten rule. And I'm like, unspoken, unwritten, and I'm a new board member? How am I supposed to know that? That makes zero sense, right? So that's why it is important that you verbalize here your expectations of yourselves and of each other and how you all want to treat each other, right? And, people say, well, that's common sense. We should be respectful. Yes, you should be, but that discussion needs to happen. How do we handle these things together? These past 2 years have been very difficult for a lot of districts. Maybe it hasn't touched your district as much, but I know as president during COVID, it can be challenging, right? You want to do right by your community and by your students, but you're not always going to make everybody happy. So it is important that you have each other's back when you're dealing with conflict, right? So it's so important to verbalize that. So setting those expectations and knowing that you are responsible to this team. You are part of something. This team of 8, everybody has a part. Everybody brings a beautiful perspective. And that lens that they're sharing their thoughts through, right, is important. but having that responsibility to each other and holding each other accountable. For so long, we heard the word accountable and we thought it was a negative thing, had negative connotations, right? We're gonna hold the system accountable, and people use it in a negative way. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be a good thing, and you should have those conversations with each other instead of letting them fester up, right, and boil over and being upset with somebody. You know, I really didn't like the way you treated me. You could have gotten your message. You know, have that conversation. Because if you just push it in, one day it's just gonna explode. And so it's really important that you all verbalize how you want to treat each other and how you want to be treated as an individual. Does anybody have any questions so far? Please stop me because I can talk forever. I'm a talker. Okay? So this is how we build a social contract. Okay, so I put some Post-its in front of you, and what we're going to answer first, this is the first question that we're going to answer. How do you want to be treated by the leader? Your leader is your president. How do you want to be treated by the leader? So you have a Post-its, you're going to write a number 1 for question number 1, and I want you to know there's going to be overlap in your answers between the questions that we're going to ask today, and that's okay. There is some commonalities that we're going to find, and very often people are like, well, it should just all be respect. Dig a little deeper. Dig a little deeper and think about how do you want to be treated by your leader? Yes, with respect, and that's a good word to use, but how else? So this is our question, and I'm gonna grab your Post-its. You're gonna share out loud, and we're gonna put our Post-its here. And at the end, believe you me, it'll make sense when we answer all these questions. And you can use more than one word, words that are important to you. And then when you're done, put your pen down so that I know that you're ready. And everybody will have the opportunity to share out what they wrote, and then I'm going to put it over here on the Post-it to capture that sentiment. How do you want to be treated by the leader? Leaders change, right? So that's why this is something you do review more than once. Like Pam said, she's going to be leaving. There's going to be a reorganization of the board after elections, so that changes. But it's a good starting point to have that conversation. Okay, we'll take about 10 more seconds.
So awesome.
Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay, great. Who wants to start us out?
I do.
Yes, sir?
As I like to be trusted and know the fact that I am here with good purpose.
And then you're going to give me your Post-it because I'm going to put it up there. I want to capture everything. Trusted. So you're going to see trusted, right?
What was it again?
I want, there should be a trust. You trust me,
You want us to trust you?
and also in reverse.
Is that what you're asking? us
Yes,
to do?
yes, and I'm here for a good purpose too.
You're gonna be the troublemaker.
I know.
I like, that's awesome. That's a good one.
Good job, Coach.
Okay.
Let me explain. When I
Yes,
say trusted, I mean when I say something, I have intention, not just, I have something beyond that.
Yes.
And I
Even with,
love that you said that. I want you to keep that in mind,
Yeah.
intention.
even with the joke.
everything.
Because we do know.
Every one-liner I say, there is something has to read
Yeah,
it.
that's exactly true.
Who's next?
I'll go next. I put with the understanding about who I am, where I come from, and what I stand for. Mutual respect.
Appreciating that lens, that perspective that you bring, and here we have respect. So you'll see that word pop up. Respect.
I recommend the bearded man.
I want to go next
Okay.
because
Oh, go.
I figure out somebody else is going to say this too. So I'm going to be the first. And I'm really probably not answering this properly because I stumbled over the word treated as an action, and maybe this isn't, I'm just going to go with it. But I want a leader, and have thankfully had a leader, that genuinely wants to hear my opinion. And in fact, each and everyone's opinion. And I'm opinionated, I imagine everyone here is, but I don't readily speak up. And especially when I first joined, and they were all very familiar with each other, and really appreciated that we've had a leader that takes the time to notice who hasn't weighed in and, puts you in a corner and says, okay, let's hear from you. And I appreciate that.
And it takes some skill as a president to encourage and foster that.
Ma'am,
Yes.
she explained my purpose more clear.
Commonalities.
We're a good team, aren't we?
He needs to go next.
Who's next?
The Reverend.
Reverend?
As a former president of the board, I think it's very valuable, and Pam has done a superb job to value everyone's opinion and concern.
I wanted to say it first.
You got him first,
I
right?
did.
Being a president is no joke,
It's not.
right? It is no joke. People can sit there and judge you, but not until you actually have served in that role do you really know how delicate it can be sometimes.
What comes with it?
And the responsibility, you still have that one vote. Your vote is not better. It's not any more powerful than anybody else's, but the responsibility of leading and making sure your team is cohesive to work together for that vision, that one goal. It's a huge responsibility. And so, thank you, Pam, thank you, Reverend, and who else has been president? So we have two. It is something, and then at the past 2 years, it has been something.
All right, since they're not jumping on it, I'll jump in.
Okay.
And then it's up for them to fight out last place.
You don't believe in ladies first?
I think
Yeah,
I
I
am
believe in it, but
last.
there's two of them. If y'all want to go first, go ahead.
I'm gonna go
I thought you had
last.
gone.
Yeah.
Y'all want to go first?
No,
Nope,
go.
no.
Okay. Number 1 is trust. Number 2 is educate. And number 3 is patient. Trust me, educate me, be patient with me.
Good.
So here's that trust again, right? And patience. 'Cause you might say things out of turn. You might say things come out in the heat of the moment. That's a skill, too. And when you get educated about what your roles are, what your responsibility is, what your expectations are of each other, then that can really help move the team forward. So patience, educate, and trust. Okay, ladies, who's next?
Well, she said me, so I said with dignity and respect because sometimes it's hard to, I'm very introverted, public speaking is not my thing. This was totally out of my comfort zone, this whole thing. But I ask questions and I ask because I don't know. And so being treated with dignity as I try to figure things out was very, very helpful to have somebody who treated me that way, so that I felt comfortable asking.
Yes. I love that, dignity.
We haven't heard from Gabe, have we?
No, we have not. He will go too, because this is a team of 8.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
everybody
It's one team.
participates.
Well,
And he has a different perspective. I would,
Yes, he
I'm
does.
gonna look at the only president that I've known while I've been here, and what I so appreciate of Pam, and look for the president, because she's kind of conditioned that in me, is a president that listens and provides the different perspectives. And I'm saying that in such a way that she's not ready to respond without hearing the full direction of what we're looking at, so that she can understand the whole thought of why this direction. And I've worked with so many people in the past that the minute you start talking, there's a solution or a wall that comes in, so you don't truly feel like you're being listened to. And I so appreciate that in the leadership, is truly listening that. Now, I'm going to say that's important because it helps me sharpen my skills so that I can be a true listener with those that I'm leading, and figure out what direction we're doing and why they're thinking what they're thinking. So, plus helps me avoid some of the minefields. I am not from Nacogdoches. So having a president that listens and be able to give me the, different perspectives. And there's times when we had that, well, okay, that might work, but let me tell you, da. And then allows me to figure out, okay, if that's the direction the school district's gonna go, but at least give me the perspective of, be prepared for this that's out there. And it allows me to prepare my team. So I would end on that. So,
Some historical context is always helpful.
yes.
It's very important, and that's the beauty of a president-superintendent relationship, right? Because we're working on the same team, but you do have opportunities to speak when you do agenda setting. And when you do agenda setting with your superintendent and look at things on the agenda and say, hey, wait a minute, you know that this issue, this board member needs this data, so make sure to include it. You can give that feedback and help navigate that system, right? Especially if you have a newer superintendent that hasn't lived in the community, doesn't know all the things, and doesn't know all the board members, to the core yet. That takes a minute. And so having that relationship is really important. And
you're
so-
gonna make me cry.
We're just talking about a leader.
Respected, but respected that we all have different opinions, and that we can have a different opinion and still respect and love one another. To be heard, listened to. I like that. I think yours is probably a little bit more poignant,
Well, no,
listening
look
to.
from my first row.
Heard.
I said, let me.
Yep, heard. And a leader that has an open heart. In other words, they don't just immediately close, but they're open to listening. They're open to respecting other people's opinions. And a leader that is fair. And by that, I mean no game playing. Unfortunately, I think on past boards, we've all experienced and seen where you might have a leader who, maybe a board member wants something on the agenda, and that leader refuses to put that on the agenda. That type of game playing, I don't think that has any place in leadership.
Not a true leader.
Yeah.
Not a true leader. And we probably all have experienced that type of leader who really might have leader label, but isn't a true leader. And so it's important to reflect on how you want to be treated by the leader. So thank you for sharing those thoughts. We're going to capture all of that here, and we're going to go to our second question. How do you want to be treated by each other? By each other. So write a number 2 on your Post-it, because I've dropped Post-its before, and I'm like, oh, it was the answer to which
Can I
question?
just take that one again?
There's going to be commonalities. There's going to be things that are going to be the same. And that's okay. how do you want to be treated by each other? So when you're done, put your pen down. And we'll see. We'll see what is the same. Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay, so now we're going to start the opposite of how we ended last time. So we'll start over here.
Oh, man. Mine will
Gotta be
probably.
fair, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and having just said all those things, I firmly believe that's how I want to be treated by everyone on this board. The only other thing I could really add that came to mind was being seen. And, and that almost comes to me to being respected, because in other words, being seen, it's like Mr. Montoya referred to it a little bit earlier, it's understanding who I am and where I come from, and what being seen. So.
Being seen.
A lot of people live in the gray, that are not heard, they're not seen.
The invisible,
They're invisible.
right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you all want to be listened to. We value. And we add value. Whether you agree with me or not, everybody brings their perspective and it should be valued. Okay? You are next.
How do I want to be treated by each other? I would say to be honest with me, be real, be transparent. Don't dance
Yes.
around, it just makes it much more painful in the long run. Just, it's better to be quick, and that way we can get to the real work, or the real engagement, the real, whatever the sweat is gonna cause us to do so. Be honest and be transparent.
Honest and transparent. And you see, this is where people differ, right? So that's why it's good to have this conversation, because there are some people that don't want to be quick to say anything. It takes them a minute. And some people need a softer touch, a softer way of being told some things, and some are to the point, right? So it just depends on the different people. So it's good to hear what your superintendent wants. Because now you know, hey, I can be honest with you. This is what you said you wanted to be treated. I can be honest with you.
But
and transparent.
with confidentiality.
With the respect. These are the caveats, right? Just put a little star by it. And not in public. Tell me in private, right? You have those offline discussions. So good to put a little star by that.
Yes.
Who is next? Right there.
So I put heard, because again, sometimes it's just hard to say something for fear of what they may think. So then I added compassionate, accepting, and then respected.
And then being an introvert, sometimes you have to find the courage to speak, right? To get out of that comfort zone and to know, I train a lot of board members, and they're like, well, I don't want to sound dumb. I don't want to ask that question. I don't want to be, I don't want to embarrass myself. And it's important to know that you don't have to be the expert on all things of the district. I think that's when we put so much pressure on ourselves to know everything so we don't sound dumb, kind of thing. We tell our kids different, so why would we treat ourselves like that? We would never treat our kids that way. We want them to ask those questions, and they might need some prompting, right, when we have introverts. They might need that extra prompting and saying, like your president has done, I haven't heard from you yet. I want to hear what you have to say. Please share that with me. Being cognizant of that. And it takes a minute to kind of make sure that's in your brain memory to do that. And so as president, what I would do was I would So I wouldn't forget anybody. I would go, okay, I'm gonna go to my left, and I call every single person on the left. And then I would go to my right, because I didn't want to forget anybody. And I was always forgotten. You know, I'm super short, okay? And so my president, my first president, would never see me over everybody else. And so that was upsetting, you know, it's like, I had my hand up first, and I wasn't seen. So it's so important, you have to be real cognizant as a board president to make sure that you're getting that input and feedback and you're not leaving anybody out. And if they don't want to say anything, they can say pass, so you're not forcing anybody, but making sure to encourage and support one another, right? Okay, who's next? Reverend.
I was a high school football player. I love sports, you know that. So the first thing I wanted to be appreciated. I want to be seen as a value to the team. They can depend on him. If I'm the center, I'm gonna snap the ball. If I'm a receiver, I'm gonna catch it. If I'm a running back, I'm not gonna fumble. So I want to be a value. I want to be seen as valuable to the team. Yeah.
Value added.
I like that.
Didn't you have that sticky note touch mine?
Who's next?
I think it was Dr. Gerlach.
Okay. Mutual trust and respect.
Mutual trust and respect.
And let me get it where I can read it. Actively, I have to read a doctor's handwriting. Actively listen to one another.
Welcome to my
And
nightmare.
not preparing to respond, like you talked about, where you're like shut down because I'm already gonna respond to that. Before hearing the whole plan or the whole idea, you shut down, ready to respond. So actively listening, really listening to understand, not to respond. So I like that. Actively listening.
I have, and it overlaps greatly.
Yes.
Agree to disagree graciously. And I just want to add, because I'm been here the least amount of time. And so when I came on, they had spent at least 2 years with each other, some more. And some of that time that they had with other board members and all of us in witnessing previous boards, it's ugly. And perhaps they've been treated ugly. I don't know. But I have just been so blessed to come into a board that learned the lesson, and possibly the public thinks that we agree on everything, but, you know, I've witnessed where we've disagreed, and I so appreciate how every one of you says exactly what you really think, and sometimes it's gotten emotional. I can't remember it ever getting heated, but emotional. And you know what? Afterwards, I have witnessed members go to one another to make sure that everything's okay. You know that I may disagree, but we're okay. And that is so important, that we're not going back and going, you know. I know right now that there are several things with different members that we will not agree on because we're coming from different, you know, perspectives. But goodness, treat them. I can't even imagine what it must be like to have to be on another board where you have to tiptoe around and they're going to say ugly things about you. Those of you who don't agree with me, you may be faking it really well, but I feel like you still respect me. Don't tell me if you don't.
That is really hard, right? Building up your team after going through something like that, right? And you're right. People can take it very personally. And you didn't agree with my vote and, you know, can get like that. not until you come to this mutual agreement that it's okay. At the end of the day, I might not have agreed with you. I still like you as a person. You know, it's okay. And you know, you're right. Sometimes the public thinks, well, they ended up voting 7-0. Oh, you know, they're all the same. It's a rubber stamp. And, you know, I actually had someone say, well, you know, your job as a board member is to be a thorn on the side of the board and the district. And I'm like, obviously, you don't know what it means to be on a team. So while we don't agree, you dialogue, you share your opinions, and then you move forward, right? And after that vote is taken, you respect the body corporate. And you can still say, because you have your First Amendment right to speak, you can still say, you know, I disagreed with buying that $5 million pool. I voted no, but the body, the will of the board was to pass it, so I support the decision moving forward. And sometimes it can be difficult when we let our ego control. Because that's what it comes back to, that ego, right? So not taking things personal and having that mutual agreement that, you know what, I might not have agreed with you, but hey, that's done, it's over, let's move forward. Because your moral imperative should be the students of this district and making sure they succeed, all students. That is your number one goal. Not, oh, did we do it my way? Who cares about that? It's about that end goal, right? So that's important. Who is next?
I guess I am. You said the same thing. I put accepting, understanding, and respected, to agree to disagree. And
Wow.
at the end of the day, that's all that we can do sometimes, is agree to disagree.
Yes.
But not harbor or fester with bad feelings, because that doesn't make sense either, so. And I think that's one thing that I've learned this whole time that I've been with this board, is that, you know, because I'm very headstrong, opinionated.
Just a little bit.
Who are you talking about?
And, you know, so I have to look at myself and examine myself, but I think agreeing to disagree and when we do the vote, it's done and over with, and I don't fester with why, you know, it's done, so.
You know, some of my best friends, actually, my best friends are on the board. I have 2 board members that are my best friends. And we don't vote the same. And we leave there and we're still best friends. And we do everything, it's not, why didn't you vote like me? You're my best friend, you're supposed to vote like me. No, we honor and respect each other's differences. That's the beauty of those differences that you all bring, right? And you could still be friends after the day. And I don't know why she voted for that, but that's okay. You let it go. This is the will of the board, and you know you want to see your team move forward. So why would you live in that and let that boil over?
Everything this gentleman and lady said, I put in a box, and I call it respect.
Man, a few words.
Respect.
But powerful.
Powerful words.
It's,
Capitalized.
to me, respect is not necessarily address you, ma'am, sir, yes, okay, thank you. It's far beyond that, far beyond that.
That's right.
And exactly what these people described it.
So it's nice to articulate everything behind that word respect.
That's correct.
Right.
Trust, believing, commitments, all of it. It's in a box.
Did everybody get to share that? Everybody shared out? Because I don't want to miss anybody. So now you're going to write number 3 on your Post-it. Okay, so your question is, how do you think the leader, which is Pam, wants to be treated by you?
What did
You're
she?
gonna find commonalities. You're gonna find commonalities. Don't look at hers. How do you think the leader wants to be treated by you? Again, reflecting the huge responsibility of being a true leader. And then when you're done, put your pen down so I can know you're ready. And you're gonna write number 3, I need to put my paper up. Number 3. Okay, 5 more seconds. Okay, who's going to start us off this time?
I will. I put, when I came on the board, Pam kind of took me under her wing, and I certainly appreciate it because I learned a whole lot from her. And she always is at an even keel, doesn't get riled, doesn't, she's been a very good leader for our board. So I feel like honesty, trust, respected, and accepted, and certainly supported.
Support it. Like that addition. Who's next?
I'll go this way. I say with dignity and respect, honesty, trusted, and I really like supported, so, I didn't write it on there, but I would steal it.
Like that, the dignity piece, right? And support it. Takes a lot to facilitate a meeting.
I'll go ahead and say, I have a box of respect and I trust and believe and know her position.
Yes, respect and trust are going to come up.
I'll go next. I figured there'd be a lot of respect and trust going around. So I was trying to think of something else as well.
If you find that word, tell me.
Well, the uniqueness of the leader. I think the leader, whoever he or she is, would like to be appreciated for the difficulty of that position, and as a result, have the rest of us assume the very best of him or her. That
Going
they're-
back to intent,
Yes.
right? And going back to appreciate, right? Intent and appreciate. Who's next?
I'll go. I'm musical. I wrote it down before you put the 3 up. Frozen. Yeah, come on, y'all know the song. What is it?
Oh, yeah, my grandkids sing that.
What is it? What? Let it go. We all know that. Let it go.
I'm like, I had to think about
There
that
are
for a
things we
second.
have to let go that are part of what they have to do. And maybe we don't like it. So we just got to let it go. They're in a position that's precarious. It's like trying to balance a teeter-totter and it's imbalanced. And that's what happens sometimes on the board. It gets imbalanced. So to go with our musicality, with compassion, because if we put ourselves in that place, we might better understand that we not should let it go, we have to let it go. Yeah, everybody's gonna be thinking that song.
Yes, it's playing in my head right now.
I've got Encanto in my head right now, so I've seen it 10
I
times.
personalized it because the well of Pam and I is real deep. When she was campaigning, she and I had lunch, and I think did I offend you? I said, Pam, why are you running?
You were
What's your
very
motive?
blunt, straightforward. What's your
That to me
agenda?
too.
Yeah, what's your agenda? But I put respected, and Pam is real big with being transparent. And she wants you to be honest with her. Don't be afraid to tell her exactly what you think or what you feel, okay? Our well is
Ditto.
deep.
Oh, my gosh. I think we've worked together on a board for a little while.
Quite a while, quite a while.
For a minute or two.
So I'll lay into that one. So the two I wrote down were honesty and transparency.
Back when board meetings was 6 hours, 5 hours.
Yeah.
I remember those days too. What a difference it makes when you actually have a leader that is competent and it makes a huge difference for your board,
Right.
you know? And when you have a leader that can facilitate that, right, and balance everything out. Huge difference, yeah, you're right. I remember midnight meetings, 1 o'clock in the morning, and now, you know, when I was president, there were an
I'm watching
hour,
Holly
an hour and a
back
half.
there. I'm watching Holly.
We had
Yes.
lots of late nights.
Yes. Who's next?
I
Okay.
guess it's me. I put, Pam wants to be followed, but not blindly. And I think a leader, not just Pam, but any leader, wants to be followed, wants to be trusted, but not blindly, and respected for the role that they have to serve, because it is a big role and a big responsibility when it comes to be the president.
Who's next? Everybody went? Lots of trust there. Trust is the foundation for everything, right?
Exactly.
And it's the
Without
easiest to
trust.
lose
Oh, my
and hardest to
goodness.
get back.
Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah, I would
But
tell my
if you
kids
have
that.
it and you're solid, you can really build on that, right? But you need to have that. Okay, your fourth question. How do we want to treat each other when there is conflict? When there is conflict, how do you want to treat each other when there is conflict? So think about times of conflict in your district. Conflict on the board. How do you want to treat each other? When you're done, put your pen down so I know that you're ready. Okay, we're all good. Who wants to start us off?
I'll go ahead since I'm sitting here. I said, listen and make sure I understand exactly where he or she is coming from and why and what's the motive.
Motive, intent. Those are some good words there. Who's next?
Like I said,
I picked you.
I stole this from the doc, so. Understanding and acceptance of our differences and opinions, and let it go.
Still singing.
Yes. It is definitely
All night
in our
long.
head.
No,
Well,
you
that's
can't let
another
it go.
song,
You
too.
have to come to a conclusion.
You just took us back to the 80s, but okay.
Motive,
Funny.
intent.
All night long.
There's some big words out there. Do you have another song for us?
I will,
Okay.
might be in
I'm
Spanish
gonna hold
though.
you to it.
Might be in Spanish.
love it.
Okay, so this one, I have mind, mouth, and heart control. That's hard.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
You know, sometimes when there's conflict, it is hard to drown out that noise, right? Wherever it's coming from, if it's coming from each other or noise polarizing the community, it's hard to tune that out. And that's where you have to think, the why, right? What are we here for? Again, it goes back to your moral imperative. That has to be, you have to be laser focused on that, so you don't let all those distractions take you away from your mission and your goals, right? Because that's easy to do. And you see that a lot in dysfunctional districts where they're too busy fighting on the board or fighting with the superintendent, that they're not focused on what their moral imperative is. They're not focused on that. And then you see things going to the wayside, right? When you have campuses that are failing, you have students that are being left behind. You're seeing that huge turnover in employees and in morale. So it's so important to be laser focused even when there's conflict. Who's next? Right here?
Okay. Well, I think in a time of conflict, then we really are tested with what we've already said. But we would need to continue with full transparency and be honest, don't hold anything back. And certainly no game playing. But I added something after those two, because I was mulling over, well, of course, but the conflict part made me add with kindness. Sometimes we can be pretty sharp-tongued, and so I really like that you said control. We're all grown-ups here, and we know how we can say something in a way that is really hurtful.
Again, reflecting on the past 2 years of challenges that have popped up across the state, across the nation. We have people, there's an outcry in the public. And sometimes it could be very hard to listen to, right? Sitting there as a board member and getting yelled at public forum, being told all kinds of, you don't care about children for this reason, and you don't care about children for the opposite reason, right? And being told over and over and just, you can't speak. But at the end of the day, there's a nugget in there. These families, community members, they're scared. They love their children and they want the best for them. And so that's something that I had to constantly reflect on as we had 60 people speaking at public forum and we were getting yelled at. I had to remind myself, it stems from love or fear. And it's so understandable. So as board members, you have to show some grace, right? Show some kindness when that does occur. And so I know I would speak to folks during the break with trying to be understanding and show that kindness. Thank you for coming to speak tonight about this issue you feel strongly about. Because people want to be listened to, like we've talked about. So it's so important to just reflect on those nuggets, right? And what is the intent? What is the motive? And sometimes as board members, we're the face of it, right? We're the face of all those things that are happening out there. And they can't yell at COVID.
Yeah.
So they come to us. So I love that you talk about kindness in that.
How do we want to treat each other when there is conflict? I'm reminded, I love my dearest mom, and I learned this lesson 30-plus years ago when my wife and I were married. We made the mistake of having a disagreement in front of her. And for years, after we had moved on, she would come back and say, "How are you and Deborah doing?" So this one is very important to me, is the confidentiality of mom and dad. Have your mom and dad time in an area where you can resolve, have open discussion, but it doesn't impact everyone else, because everyone else has a hard time letting go of that because they see that conflict ongoing, and we've moved on. And I'm reminded of that regularly. This board, I sat and had such great solace sitting in that chair, and I knew every one of these board members knew what I had just gone through, because I lost my mom. I lost her during these 2 years. And when you see and hear the argument from that podium that attacks you and the decisions that you're making, that board knows what I was going through. And so I didn't have to respond. But it was the relationship we have with each other and able to have those conversations behind closed doors about the struggle of going through that. So I think it's the old record, the needle on the record. I'm going to go to the music theme, okay? The old, because if those of us that remember the record, you can pick up the music and put that needle right back in that same spot and continue the music. And that's where I think about conflict, is if you do it openly and you have it out in where everybody can see it, we will move on. But other people will put that needle right back where it was, and that's when the scabs start festering and it doesn't heal. It doesn't move forward. So I think confidentiality is a big one when you're having conflict, is respect each other, to have that in a place that it's confidential, but be honest and be real about that, so,
And what's going to be more effective,
yeah.
right? I know that, when I heard that comment from somebody saying, you should be the thorn on the superintendent's side and the board side and all that, it's like, what's going to be more effective? For me to yell at my fellow board members? That's not the way you work as a team. That's not the way you come to an agreement and take action and move forward. By yelling you to change your mind? Is that gonna work? Is it gonna be effective to embarrass your superintendent administration? Is that gonna work? It creates people to be defensive, right? And so then when you talk right away, so you're right, it's so important, and I always tell my board members that I'm training, I always tell them, you have those conversations offline. There's a time and a place for everything. You can professionally disagree, right, at a meeting, that's okay. But when you feel yourself starting to teeter and crossing that line, that's not okay, because you're the example. You are the ambassador of your district, and you should act accordingly. And that's huge. And people feel like, oh, well, then I can't disagree with the recommendation. No, we can have robust conversations. And I love my superintendent. My superintendent is amazing. And I have robust conversations, but I know when it's a professional, robust conversation, and when that passion is getting way over that line, because you're right, you can't, not only can you not take it back, people remember, and why would you want to blindside anybody with that kind of behavior? That doesn't make for an effective team. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir?
There are times that we discuss, for example, behind the closed doors.
Yes.
There is a scenario that your heart is not, or your conscience is not, meets it. When you come to the open meeting on acting, act on it. And how would you advise that? I abstain or just vote no?
You can vote no.
I understand, but.
Yes, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
Don't let, just for appearance sake, that you don't vote,
Right.
right?
I may say that it's never happened,
Yes.
but you never know in the future.
So I had a vote the other month and love my superintendent. I trust his recommendations. I didn't like this agenda item. Didn't like how it went down. I felt I didn't have enough information. I felt like it was being shoved down my throat. And that's not his style. It just didn't feel right to me. I believed in it would be okay and it'll work itself out. I just didn't like the way it was presented. And even though, and so at the meeting when we were taking action, I said, I didn't get all the information I requested in a timely manner. I did not appreciate XYZ from the vendor. And I trust you 100%. And I have all the confidence that this is gonna work out. But I have to vote no on this tonight. Because, and I had outlined my reasons, because I just didn't feel comfortable with the timeliness of this. And I voted no. And I told my superintendent, you know I trust you, 100%, and I will always back you up. But I feel so uncomfortable with this agenda item moving forward, I can't support it. But having that conversation and not blindsiding somebody in public, nobody wants that.
Sure.
So that's why it's important to have these conversations. Because maybe there was something that could have been fixed, or to get me at that comfort level where I would vote yes. But definitely, that's your vote, your right, and just behave accordingly. Not, I'm gonna vote no because your team didn't do what they were saying, it wasn't that conversation. Who's next?
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yes.
In that scenario, in your example, I would hope, and this is where we've had some dialogue, and that's the expertise in working with the president, is just to pull the agenda item and say, I'm gonna pull this agenda item, because I don't want to be the rationale, the reason that the board doesn't get it. And I'm telling you, I try to information them to death. So it's a true transparency. And if I miss something, I would like to have that opportunity to make sure that before they went out, that I would know, okay, wait a minute, there's still some Lumen information. I thought we were ready to go with it. Let's pull this agenda item. And I know we've done that a couple of times where I want to go back and reset, get everything information, answer some questions. However, I think to Coach's point, to his question, in the last 2 years, it's been extremely, because it divides a lot of, and it's okay and from what I'm hearing you say, it's okay to vote no. It's, in my opinion, I'm hearing you say, it's better to participate in the vote and stay with your core, because abstaining is not gonna make you feel any better about voting with it. It's whether you're yes or no. So that's what I was hearing. Is that what I'm hearing you say to Coach?
Definitely. I mean, abstain, what is abstain, really?
Cowardice.
Coward.
Exactly. Take it, unless you have a conflict of interest,
Right.
there's caveats to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You vote. That's why the community put you in that seat, to vote. And it's gonna be, sometimes things get pulled from the agenda, which is great to do that, but sometimes it's not feasible for the
Yeah, sure.
timeline, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't feasible for them to pull it, and, we have 2 board meetings a month, and so we discuss it, so we all knew what the vote was gonna be.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's great to have that conversation of why,
Exactly.
but abstain is, yeah. We actually have it in our board operating procedures that if you abstain, you're gonna say why. You just can't abstain and say nothing. And it's like, well, I didn't wanna be in the middle of this,
pretty good.
No. You have to abstain for a real reason.
why?
And so I have abstained because I was on 2 boards, so it was a MOU
Conflict.
that I had to abstain from, and so I would say that. But other than that, don't get me started on, you shouldn't be talking if you're gonna abstain.
That's right.
You should not be talking. You cannot try to influence anything and then hit with abstain. don't get me started. Whew, that gets me
Take
hot.
up 20 minutes in closed session. Come out of here, abstain.
Yes.
Really? Why are you asking all the questions?
Why don't you take 20 minutes of my time? I know, we could have been eating.
Okay, who is next? Reverend?
Question 4 bespeaks recent history for this board. We had an action agenda, item on the agenda, whether or not to mandate mask. And I want to commend our board. Yes, it was a little emotional, but this is what took place. The first thing, we all heard each other's concern. I can't recall everybody verbatim, but I remember what Mindy said. My husband don't mind wearing a mask, but he don't want to be told or made to wear one. I said, that's another way to look at this. So we all heard each other. We were all thoughtful through the process, and we were all open in the process. So I think if we're going to deal with conflict between each other, that's got to continue. We got to listen and be open and thoughtful.
Reverend, I have been part of a board that was not quite frank with each other. And
Thank you, man.
fortunately,
I remember that.
the last 3 years, we have been on the same page and it's pretty harmony, very good harmony.
Such a difference, right? I mean, for the people who have experienced, Dr. Trujillo, you haven't experienced
No, I haven't.
that.
Yeah.
But going to board meetings and feeling that in the pit of your stomach, this is just so toxic and negative and dreading it. And this is something you love, 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 love with all your heart. Because that's why you commit so much time and energy. And it's such a difference when that gets lifted and you can actually joke with each other and talk to each other, and you don't have to agree with each other.
Right.
But you have that mutual respect. You could be so different. And wow, that weight is lifted and you can get to work on doing right by kids and by your community.
Well,
Oh, what a difference.
it hadn't always been that way. There was a
Oh, I
time
hear you.
you come to the board meeting, it has already been decided.
Yes.
The vote has already been taken, whether you vote yes or no. Did you kind of get that feeling that it's already been decided?
That was
Yeah.
my first
In the
year.
past,
Yes,
in the
Not in my
past.
experience.
yeah.
So what a
Thankfully, we're not there
difference.
anymore.
What a difference. And to feel confident enough that you can actually leave the board in good hands.
Absolutely.
Wow, it's like, and so my best friend who's on the board, after 12 years on the board, she's like, I'm ready to go. I did the things, and this board is solid, this district is solid, there's no room for improvement, but I can let it go now. Right?
I just lost that song, you just brought it right back.
It's his fault. Mindy?
I think that when we deal with conflict, we can never forget our humanity. And I think that that's where I kind of lean back towards my faith. So when I see conflict, I think we've got to remain compassionate with each other. We still have to be very honest and transparent, but I think we have to approach it with forgiveness, with grace, and with mercy. Those are mine.
Powerful words.
Yes.
I like those words.
Maybe not physical violence, because I just like to.
No, don't do a Will Smith.
I think mine are gonna be very much like others, except for maybe one. I put honesty, calmly, transparently, no game playing. But then I said, don't stop talking.
Yeah.
In other words, don't shut down. Because if you lose that ability to communicate, then that anger and that frustration or that whatever that conflict is going to keep brewing. But keep it open. Keep that communication open.
And I like the addition of calmly,
Calmly.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're hearing about you, that you have been able to navigate that calmly with them, right? Because if you're all riled up, then you rile other people up. And then you cause the community to be like distrustful, like what's going on? If they're all upset and riled up, there must be something bigger out there. You know, so having that calmness when you're dealing with issues. And believe you me, I have evolved tremendously from where I had to be like, because, I mean, we were collapsing and I was hair on fire and everything. There was a sense of urgency that needed to happen. But being able to come from that and be in a more calming place where you know things will work out, things will happen, and we might not all agree on how to get there, but we're gonna get there. And so that's really important. Do you want to add something?
No, I was gonna ask, I don't want to interrupt you though, when we get to kind of the end of that, could we take maybe a little break?
I have a
It's okay.
break built in.
Ah, there you go.
Can I?
Could I add, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Reverend, go ahead. You do.
And when you mentioned the community will know, and I thought about, there have been times, and I don't know if you guys know this, when we walk out of closed session, the audience studies us.
Oh, yes.
They read our faces, our demeanors, so they know if there's something in the air. And I just didn't know,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
That body language
Yes.
speaks.
Facial
volumes.
expression.
Yes.
Mine is always trying to run up here from having to go to the bathroom in between, so mine is just funny.
What was enlightening, Pam said it just now, and I appreciate it, is you don't ever think about that side of it, but that disengagement that sometimes it does occur. When conflict occurs, disengaged.
Yes.
And I don't have any value, and then I become, I withdraw from the group, or withdraw from the process, and that could be a lonely place to be. And I'm also a person of faith, and a lot of times is, when you do that, nobody knows, so your worst enemy is yourself.
right.
Because nobody knows you're feeling that way. Nobody knows that you've withdrawn yourself, so you disengage, and all of a sudden, I don't feel appreciated. Well, nobody knows that 'cause it's all internal, and you're doing it to yourself rather than others doing it to you. So I like the term that you use, because you can withdraw and not engage and disengage yourself in that process. I didn't think about that aspect of it. In conflict, that happens when people don't feel part of the resolution on the other side of it.
I know that we sit on this board as a group of trustees and we're elected. We're also all human, and we're gonna always still have that piece of us that imperfect, sitting right here at the table, and we may do something that is offensive without the intent of offending. So I think if you can, extend that grace, and then also have humility to realize that you made a mistake. I think those things are extremely important for us to be a united group of people.
And that's a fantastic word, humility. Because when you lose that ego and you have that humility, right, you can say, I wronged you. I shouldn't have said it that way.
I never did.
I shouldn't have said it that way. Because that's hard.
Yep.
That is really hard. Okay, so we have like 2 more slides. Y'all want to take a break, or do you want to wait those 2 more slides?
Let's go ahead and knock them out.
Okay.
Depends on the length of the.
Unless they're-
Yeah, I know.
So much longer.
How do y'all
They're
feel?
kind of short.
Okay.
They're kind of
2 more slides or break now?
Let's finish the slide.
All right.
Let's
Everybody's
go.
good.
I'm holding you hostage here. Okay, how do you utilize a social contract? First, you need to collaborate on it, which you all did. Because if you have somebody who's not participating or sharing their opinion, are they gonna have buy-in?
No.
No, they're gonna say, this is your social contract, it's not mine. So it's so important for that collaboration piece. And so what we also allow for is for introverts. They don't have to be forced to speak. They can write it down and, I could read it or we can put it up.
I mean, I'm better.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because you
Come out of my shell just a
Yes,
little, but
just
I'm
a
just saying the
little.
first year was rough.
And then making sure that it's accessible. So a social contract should not be something that's written and hidden. It should be something that is posted. Our social contract, we read it at every board meeting. It's gonna be really short, so I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Don't fret. We read it at every board meeting. It's on our website because we want the community to know. And we want the community to hold us accountable to it as well. We have it in all our papers, right, with your agenda. So that's important, to be accessible. And then we have a poster up in our boardroom. And then the effectiveness. If I have Pam here who keeps breaking this social contract, then I'm gonna have that conversation with her, right, offline. Not humiliate her or do it in front of the whole board, but have that conversation. Pam, you know, I see that you're not following the social contract. Is there a reason why, you know, you agreed to these things? That we should have respect, that we should have, and then we can have that conversation, right? It could be a one-off that, you know, and we can have that discussion, or it might be more than one person are like, this doesn't reflect us. So then you review, and it should be a true representation of where you're at as a board. Oh, sorry. I went too fast. Okay, so this is an example of a social contract. Told you it's short. So our social contract says, the board will serve as district ambassadors. And we answered all those 4 questions. The board will be professional. The board will collaborate as a team and respect the body corporate. These are things that were important to us. The board will promote discussion and respect each other. Because we want to hear all those voices, right? We want to hear your voice is as important as his voice. We want to hear all those voices. And the board will assume positive and noble intentions. Going back to motive, going back to intent. Because if I go into a meeting knowing, you know, I know we're so different and our perspectives are going to be different, but I know you're coming from a good place, right? There's no question about you're coming with a good intent. You want to see the success of all students. So going into a meeting with that mentality changes things. I know you're coming from a good place. I'm not going to agree with you, but I know you want what's best. That's what you think is best. This is what I think is best. But assuming positive and noble intentions. Wow, that was like a huge relief, right? When we started thinking about things like that. Because you can be jaded in this position. You can become jaded when you see the dysfunction. And you could say, she's coming in it. Oh, she has her own agenda. Oh, this, oh, that. But instead, knowing that her nuggets, why she's doing it, is good intent. But not only assuming it, but actually coming from it. So we can't just assume. Everybody needs to be on the same page, knowing that that's where they're coming from.
So in your district,
Yes, sir?
was this in place when your board was dysfunctional?
No, sir.
So this was after,
This is with our new superintendent.
okay, there's no superintendent.
Yes.
Okay.
And so every year, we review it during, when we review our board operating procedures and have our team of 8, and we tweak it. We've actually tweaked it. We've had it for 3 years now, 4 years. I always tell them, I don't know anything before you. I have like really blocked it out. So I keep saying, he's been with us for 6 years, and he hasn't. And I keep saying that, but I try not to, I keep thinking, oh, I just want to think that it was you the whole time, and I have blocked all that negative energy. right? So we've had it for the years that he's been with us.
So,
My question is, for example, on number one, service district ambassadors.
Yes.
Was that something that the entire board had consensus? So
Yes.
everything you
all
have
of
on there
these-
is consensus by all board?
All of this. So service district ambassadors, and that stemmed from board members going on social media and saying horrible things about each other, about the district, about the superintendent, about the decisions we made. And even though it's in your board ethics, you shouldn't do that. You know, this is something that we expected of each other. And then I would tell people as president, I did it, and as just a regular board member, I've done it. Hey, you broke that social contract. Why? Tell me why. I mean, what, maybe I'm missing something. Having those conversations. Those are critical conversations, and some people might be introverts or not, might not have those conversations. But you can always go to your president or someone else. Never, ever, 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 ever put your superintendent in the middle of that. Never. You'll never ask your superintendent to resolve conflict with other board members.
help me out, Doc, come on.
His job is not to do that. You all collectively are his boss. And you cannot get him in the middle of any drama or conflict. So that is a conversation for you all to have. And while he is part of the team of 8, he has a voice, he is a part. That's not his job to resolve conflict. Here, with you all. Now, with employees, you know, he does what he needs to do, but with you all. So this is something that we read at every board meeting. We take to heart, we tweak it once a year, depending on the dynamics of the board, right? And being professional, because there was that body language and the rolling of the eyes and the, you know, and collaborate as a team. And respecting the body corporate was so important for us, because there was, for example, there was an agenda item, it failed. And then somebody put it back on the board president put it back on the agenda. Well, it failed again. And then she put it on the agenda again. And it's like, that's not respecting the body corporate. Legally, you can do that, but the spirit of our board, you should not do that. So legally, they have the upper hand because legal is over board operating procedures. So while you legally could do that, you're damaging our relationship when you keep doing that. So that's why we had respect the body corporate. And then promote discussion, again, we talked about what that means, and then assuming positive and noble intentions. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Don't see anything in your contract that connects the board to the community,
This is not about the community.
okay?
This is about the board and their expectations of themselves and each other. Now, where the community fits in is, and we've seen it, they'll go on social media and say, I saw the board meeting last night, Esperanza is not following the social contract. She was not being professional. That's where the accountability piece is. Because then it's like, oh, I was just called out on social media, and it's true. I wasn't.
The reason I raised that, because number one, and of course, we've graduated from that, that, you know, we've had board members who thought that their intent and their purpose was to be the voice for the community, which in all actuality, we're the voice for the kids that can't vote for themselves, and to support our superintendent and the teachers. And that's what that says. We are ambassadors for the district, not for the people out there that
You
actually
serve-
voted for us.
And let me explain a little bit about district ambassador, right? We serve, so in media and everything, there's so much negativity on public education, nationally, statewide. So we try to promote all the positive things that are going on in our district. We are the connection to the community, so we should be proactively sharing things that are happening in our district. And it's not saying that our district's perfect.
Right.
But you're an ambassador, you are the face of the district. You have one spokesperson, but you are the face of the district. So when you're in line at Brookshire or wherever, and somebody hears you saying, man, but that decision really stinks, and I can't believe we're doing that, and so that person tells another person, and then you get that negativity just moving on. So our job is to serve as district ambassadors, promoting the good things and saying, hey, you know, we still have some pockets of challenges. We still have, you know, we're still dealing with our phonics, but you know what? Dr. Trujillo has a plan, and I'm really excited about how we're moving forward. And if we're not, we're gonna revisit that, right? Because his job is to come up with a plan. Now, we trust that he is the educational leader of your district. He's the expert in all those things you don't have to be an expert about. But being an ambassador is so important, especially when you have come from dysfunction and now you're showing the community this beautiful opportunity, this wonderful opportunity that you have now and what it could be, and reach for those lofty goals, right? Any other questions on this? And then I'll release you to break. So what I do after all these words, sorry, you see, you made me talk again. After capturing all these sentiments that you all shared, then I come up with this. I come up with your 4 or 5 things. And then you all look at it and see if it's a true representation of what you all said. And then that is something that you can have as a tool. Any questions about that? I know you really want to go on break. Any questions about that?
He's been threatened.
I'm just saying.
Okay, so we will take a, 15 minute?
15 minute, okay with everybody?
Yep.
All right, let's do that.
Come back.
Yep.
I can take.
To you.
So we're gonna
Ben?
get back to it. Everybody's ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now that we've done the social contract piece, and we will solidify that with your statements, we're gonna move on to review why public education. So who can read this for me? Doctor, can you read this for me?
Yeah, if I get my glasses.
What is the mission of public
The right
education?
one. The mission of the public education system of the state is to ensure that all Texas children have access to a quality education that enables them to achieve their potential and fully participate now and in the future in the social, economic, and educational opportunities of our state and nation.
And that's from our Texas Education Code.
That was revised on February of 2020.
Very good. Am I gonna do a quiz?
Sure.
You got it right. So these have been, the things we're gonna look at have been revised, but it is part of the Texas Education Code. And what is the Board of Trustees? Who can read this for me? Mindy, you wanna read this?
The Board of Trustees is the governing body for Texas Public Schools. To effectively meet the challenges of public education, school boards and superintendents must function together as a governance leadership team.
So even if you don't agree, you have to work together, right? So that really stood out for me. I'm going through campaigning and election time, and when I hear comments like, well, you're not a thorn, it's like, I reflect back on this statement. Because someone who really is in public education, and they'll know this, right? How are you gonna get anything done if you're just stepping over each other? And you all, some of you have been there,
Can I read you two quotes?
yes.
This is her quote.
Okay.
I don't even know, this is, these are things that I have carried with me, okay? Desire to ensure that every child, regardless of where they live, how they are raised, or income level of their family, receives a first-class education. That's basically that summation. And this one is reverence. A joint effort to ensure a quality education for all students and promote an enjoyable and rewarding workplace for all. So when you read that first one and you're reading this one, and I have the others, I just want to make sure that what you're reading is what I'm hearing in the language that's out there. So when the community reads it, they can see these are actual quotes from their board members that they've elected and that I get to work with, so.
Exactly, and I mean, that sums it up, right? That joint effort. You have to have a joint effort. It can't just be you by yourself without the support of these folks here. Because then you're not gonna get everything accomplished. You might get some stuff done, but you're not gonna get everything accomplished if you don't work together.
Would you say, excuse me, we are the wheels and he is the driver? Does that make sense?
You're the wheels, because you're gonna help him get there, right? But he has that focus, he knows the plan, he knows how to get us there, right?
It's the driver.
Yes, so that's very accurate. And we can only do this together. Working as a cohesive team will get you farther than a dysfunctional team. And what is the school board's authority? As I'm teaching board members throughout the state, people often forget, and even people that are experienced forget what their role is and forget what their authority is. Pam, can you read this for me?
The trustees, as a body corporate, have the exclusive power and duty to govern and oversee management of public schools of the district.
So, is it individually, Pam?
No.
It says a body corporate. That's where the power is. We have over 1,000 school districts in the state of Texas. Over 1,000. And they have this huge responsibility to educate the children of our future. That's our future there. And they have to govern and oversee that management of it. Who wants to read this one for me?
Because the board is the body corporate, members can perform no valid act except as a body at meeting properly convened at the conduct.
Yes. So because the board is a body corporate, the decisions happen here at a board meeting. You can't have those decisions like you talked about. I came into a board meeting, the decisions were made. Can't have that. Can't have that. It has to be at a called board meeting where those decisions are made. You can have an opinion. You can talk to another board member. Can't have quorum. Can't have walking quorum. But you can talk to other board members about it too more. And you can flesh it out and talk about it. Is your understanding about this agenda item the same as mine? I want to hear your take. But you can't take action outside of a called board meeting. So what is your job? What is the what of a school board? To govern and oversee management. What does that mean? Govern and oversee management. What do you really have control over? Tell me. What is the
Vision,
one thing you have control over?
vision.
Vision,
Budget?
budget.
Hiring the superintendent.
Ooh, hiring the superintendent. That's huge responsibility. Wow. What else?
Policy.
Policy.
Approve the policy.
Policy. So that is the what? You're in charge of those goals as well. You vote on those goals, right? And you have those overarching themes that you come up with for your goals, and then your superintendent fleshes it out with those performance indicators, right? The evidence of attainment gets fleshed out by your staff, but you have that overarching goal that you all collaborate on. Policy, like Mindy said, you all are responsible for policy. Now, there's easy policy where TASB will update everything federal and state and all that. Easy peasy, you just have to adopt it, routine in nature, right? It's not anything you can change. But then as a board, you also have the option of creating X policy, which is local policy. And so we have created so much local policy to create an employee-friendly district. So we have a lot of X policy. So policy is so much fun to work with. So policy. And then hiring and firing the superintendent.
No, just hire here.
Well, we don't need to worry
Thank
about
you,
that.
Dr. Robert.
Matter. Hiring the superintendent, and wow, that's intense, isn't it?
It was. It
Yep.
was very intense.
And it's a lot of responsibility. And it's so great when it pays off. When you're like, yes, we were right.
It's time consuming.
Yes.
And I appreciate
You
it.
need to stay there.
Appreciate it.
We're ready to do this again.
That's right, that's right. So I told my superintendent, you're gonna retire here. You're not going anywhere.
On our second, on his callback, we spent 5 hours, is that right?
I can't remember, but
It
that's.
was 5 hours, I counted. And we were sitting in there looking at our goals. We were way beyond, we were unifying our vision together in that second exposure to him. And basically, we became a team that night. We were really good.
It speaks volumes, you know, because on paper, somebody looks really good, right? Oh, yeah, on paper, this is the way we should go. But not until you interact and talk to them and really see the sincerity of their words. Do you really get that feel for who is right for your district, your community, because it's yours when you first go through that process, and then it's ours. So,
Can I just say this, Pam, not one of the other candidates is gonna have the middle school experience that we're gonna need
Yes.
this upcoming year, except Dr.
That's
Tina.
true.
That's
Yep.
true. We have no way of
That's
knowing.
We had no way of knowing.
That's divine. There,
And,
you're
you know,
stuck
we
there.
was looking at, you know, where they come from in contrast to our numbers, but we never focused just on the middle school.
and sometimes you take that leap, I mean, it is a leap of faith. It is a huge leap of faith, you know, and paper doesn't always make the best sense. You know, our super came from a small school district to a 20,000 district, but we had that faith in that. And then
How?
the superintendent is the how. So what is your how? What do you do as a superintendent?
Put the teams together, make sure that the work is, that we're charged to do is aligned to the goals, follows the policy, and within the budget that we have provided, and is valued by the community. So it's all trickled down from what the board is looking at, what they're responsible for. It just gets much more granular to the how and where you're rolling up the sleeves and doing the work, because it also goes back up to share what we're doing.
So knowing how to implement all those things you want, right? All those things that you all come up with together. Okay, we have all these goals, now how do we get there? Having that plan, right? So creating those plans, those systems like you talked about, and procedures is what your superintendent does. And monitoring the system. Because that's why you have your formative, best practice is to have at least 3 formative assessments and 1 summative, right? And having those check-ins, and the superintendent being able to say, hey, you know, I had come up with this plan on how to reduce a graduation, how to reduce the dropout rate. I came to y'all with a plan, but you know what? After 3 months of implementing it, I learned that we're gonna need an additional counselor. So I'm tweaking that plan and sharing that information, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, that's a failure.
When Dr. Trujillo came for his interview, he was like, he had all this stuff under his arms, and he was ready to go. And, you know, all the stuff that he shared with us during the interview and stuff, I mean, he had done his homework about NSD #1, that was a good thing, because he knew about what he was talking about when he came here, and he showed us some things that we had that I don't think, I didn't really was aware of it when he pointed out some things and stuff, but I knew that when he came and sat with us that first time, and then they made arrangements for you guys to go up to, whoever wanted to go up to Dallas. I'll be honest with you, I didn't feel that there was a need for me to go see what he was talking about, because he did such a good job of explaining that to us and visualizing that I just was okay. I mean, I was already sold, so that's just the way it was.
When I was running, excuse me, for school board, my public comment was that, I'm sorry, they said the district is like a ship with no captain, wandering around, and we're fortunate to have some quality, thank you, quality teachers and people, staff, bringing it to the shore. And now we have a captain, and we did not take a chance on it. We knew what we were going to get.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
It's very humbling and a great responsibility
Yes.
that you don't take for granted. When we
And-
talked earlier about trust, I truly believe trust is the hardest thing to get back when you lose it. All we have to do is think about our own kids.
That's right.
If your child tells you, I'm going to go to the movies, and you find out he didn't go to the movies, he was over here, then the next time he tells you he's going to go to the movies, you're going to say, okay, you can go to the movies. But you're left with that mind thinking, is he really going to go to the movies? Whereas before, if he never took advantage of that trust, I would never second guess it. So I don't take it for granted that this is a relationship, a team of one, but it's also the polishing relationship between each individual board member to make sure that whatever questions are asked, it's important. It's important enough to get answered to. Whatever inquiries are asked, it's important for us to get the details so that we can be fully transparent. And sometimes my board doesn't know what they don't know. So I don't want them stumbling through trying to figure out, because that's where you get the conflict. There's where you get the, I'm not going to vote because I don't get information. And I'm not saying all the time, but I want to make sure that I can give them as much information. But it's very humbling to hear it. But I put my pants on one leg at a time, like everyone else in this, around this table. And by the grace of God, I'm been successful. But I do say that it's, I don't take it for granted.
My granddaughter told me this past couple of weeks, and I was there. She goes, Grandpa, with great leadership comes very, very great responsibility. 15-year-old.
Wow.
You know, because they all know I'm involved with the school board. They all know, I mean, and it was kind of like, I was just surprised that a 15-year-old would tell me. But yeah, you do have a lot of responsibility. But you got us to support you, so that's the big thing. That's the whole thing, is that, yeah, there's a lot of, and there's responsibility for all of us too, but we're all in it together, so.
And it's huge because you are gonna make mistakes, right?
Oh, yeah.
All of us make mistakes. But having that humility and saying, hey, I made a mistake. You know, instead of hiding the fact that they went to the movies, went to the party instead of the movies.
Yeah.
You know, Dad, I lied and I did this, you know.
Yeah.
It's a huge difference. Right? And so that's something that I can definitely appreciate. And you get that, the first time that I got that from our superintendent, I was shocked. I worked with 5 superintendents. And I was, what? He's apologizing to the community for this? It was so refreshing and real and genuine and humble, and wow, that's the way a true leader is, right? You know, making sure when they do a misstep, they don't try to hide it and cover it, but have that transparency that you all talked about, and that honesty.
Well, I want to share something with you because I don't know if the rest of the board knows this or not, but Dr. Trujillo in February was our guest speaker for Concerned Black Men in Nacogdoches, which I'm a member of. And I knew he was going to knock it out of the ballpark. I mean, I knew he was going to do that. I just didn't have any. And you know, my other members kept saying, well, you know, he knows we don't want him to talk more than 30 minutes. But I'll tell you what, he captivated that audience in the time that he spoke. And after that, and since that's been over with, I have so many people tell me, man, where did you guys find this guy? And so that says a lot. That says a lot for Dr. Trujillo. It says a lot for us as a board because we were able to get somebody really good to step up and take care of this community. And the community's happy. The community's happy. So.
But I think what helped us to evolve was our interaction with AJ.
Oh my God, yeah.
AJ Craybill.
Craybill, because what he done, he helped us as a board to focus on the what. Because previous boards wanted to do the how.
That's right.
So we know that we got to operate in the what and let the superintendent handle the how. And that's what keep us focused.
And it's important as you get new board members that you reflect on that.
Right.
And even going through it, having that refresher and staying laser focused.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it can slide.
Yeah.
It can slide to the wayside, and it's hard sometimes not to get caught up in all of that.
But at the same time, I'm sorry, at
No, you
the
go
same time, weak leadership allow these things to happen.
Yes.
And we know that, yeah.
You know what's interesting, I love your visual, because the big box of blue is the governance, the big box of green is the superintendent. But this board can honestly tell you that I call that little box in the middle,
Weeds.
the weeds. And I did that from day one,
Yeah.
when we have a conversation. From day one, I said, we're gonna go in the weeds. I want them to know that together we're gonna go in the weeds, but I'm not going into the weeds because I want them to have solution, but we have to get granular. We're gonna go a little deep for a little bit, but then we're gonna back right back out, and I want you to trust that this school district is gonna be able to grab this and go with it. But if I don't do that, it doesn't arm the board with the community, because there's sometimes a question may come up that does require that little box. And you could have easily done something different. You could have taken that and put a separate blue box and a separate green box. But there is some areas that we have to clearly understand that will kind of overlap, but understand that the how, that's why it's a little darker on the green, because it's on top of that what, is that how is just being very transparent with what's going on. And I was just looking at your graphic, and I'm thinking that's very, very intentional in how we interact with each other.
Because there is that overlap sometimes.
Yeah.
You will have that overlap. But knowing what your role is, and I like that you make that distinction of saying, hey, I'm gonna bring you to the weeds, into the weeds. But you know what, you're going back out. I just
Yeah,
wanted
and I
to
say that.
show you.
And I do say that.
Yes, and that's so
I'm not asking for
important.
permission.
I like that,
Letting you
that's the
know.
favorite thing. I'm not asking for permission.
That's right.
I've got to give you a lot of credit, having worked with a handful of superintendents. I think that you're the first one that I've experienced that has handled that so skillfully. And that is hats off to you, sir, for that, because that takes some confidence
Yes.
in yourself to be able to navigate that the way you do, and you handle it beautifully.
I mean, that's pretty huge, because some superintendents might not feel comfortable saying to a board member, hey, you're getting in the weeds, right?
You out of your lane.
So you have to be,
I prefer the weeds to the
yes,
lane.
to the lane, you don't want to
Church, I
crash.
tell you, you out of poop.
But feeling confident and secure enough with the relationships you have created here to be able to do that speaks a lot.
I'd like to say one thing about the we. I'd like to expand it. We did a search or asked for input from teachers and the community. So the we, and the getting Dr. Trujillo here, is not the we sitting at this table, but the we of our community and our employees of this district, the teachers and other people. And what was so amazing, Coach Farshid said at one of the meetings, there's no way that we can exactly match what they wanted. And it was very detailed. But when we did find him and call him and ask him to come, and he says, yes, of course, Leah, I want to come. The people would go, he fits exactly what I wanted. And that, to me, is something that's not just us, but we as a community of Nacogdoches and workers together. So maybe somebody else wants an insight on that too. I think that's a real critical part, that it's just not the we when we sit up there, but the we of our community.
And it reflects your community values and the priorities of your community. And that's so important when you have those focus groups, right? Making sure that their input wasn't for naught, it wasn't just a waste. It actually has meaning. So that is awesome to share that perspective, right? Not many people think that way of the we as a whole.
You know what's important too also is, and you know this because you've lived it these last 2 years, and prior to the 2 years, I've heard superintendents say that they thought the job was hard. I don't know what the job was before the 2 years. I just know traveling this journey with Pam as the president and this board for the last 2 years, and the journey you've taken. And I really truly believe, and I've got some good friends that are in this, I got good friends that have retired. I know board members that are out there across different school districts that they had plenty of opportunity to blur that blue box and that that green box, and it's made it so difficult. That's why boards members are dropping off. That's why board members fractured. That's why superintendents retired and superintendents left. I think this is a very powerful slide that needs to be recharged because it kind of lost itself in the last 2 years and tried to redefine itself in different ways. Because of, I just see this in relationship to what we had just gone through. That we all have PTSD because of the last 2 years. And because it's all a bit on the emphasis of meeting the needs of our kids. But there were so many distractors, derailers. And then Zoom comes in, and now you have not only your community, but we were bombed. We're in a meeting, and we get bombed on a Zoom, and our jaws drop because we're hearing things that we're not used to hearing from the community. And it wasn't our community. People were zooming in from all over the country, just doing things. And so I think all that to say is I see this slide so much more than just what you're presenting, because it's something that is needed to clearly understand, and we've done a marvelous job in executive and out here to make sure that we knew this and kept it going, and allowing each other to differences to come in and just right back out and do the work. So I think it needs to be said, because it's been so it's just been so weird, and makes people really, for me, it recharges me. For me, it was just, it excites me for the potential that we have. But it wouldn't be that way if we weren't working with a group of people that really, truly believe, he was wearing it on his shirt, one team, one goal. So I just wanted to make sure that how much I appreciate this board and also this community.
Well, Dr. Trujillo, excuse me, the first question, I was the first person who responded to, it says trust.
Yeah.
We trusted you. I remember.
Trust is everything.
Yeah.
Trust is everything. And navigating that 2 years together, instead of like this, we're navigating together for that better good, right?
Yeah.
For what's best for kids, what's best for our students and our employees. So always keeping that in mind. And when there is that overlap, what we are doing in this piece right here is taking time to evaluate, right? That's where you see that overlap, is you're evaluating those goals. You're evaluating that policy. You're evaluating those plans and the superintendent. That is your overseeing the management, but not in, let's do it my way, let's be the how. And it's easy to get there, especially coming from dysfunction. Sometimes it's hard to change your ways, right? If you don't have the right leader in place. And so I was fortunate enough, we had the right leader, and I let it go. And I was like, I trust you. I totally trust you, 100%. And I was able to stay on my side, on my area, making sure that I covered my area. And that's why we became an honor board, because of the work that we had done together. So I'm going to go real quick over the basic roles of the board. So I'm going to skip some slides for you all a little bit. But the basic roles of the board, there's a couple of basic ones, right? So we have the responsible school governance piece. What does that mean? That's what we've been talking about. That mindset, that working relationship that you all have with each other and with your superintendent. Responsible school governance. Because if you all are not in that mindset of working together, then you're not going to accomplish those goals. You're not going to get there if you don't have that. You can't have that fractured pieces, right? That's not going to help you. So responsible school governance. And you're also demonstrating this to your community. Like somebody said, when we walk out of closed session, people look at us to see what is our body language. Are we angry and closed off? Or are we okay? They look for that, for those cues from us. So responsible school governance. High expectations is your role. And when we talk about high expectations, we always talk about high expectations for our kids, which we should have. High expectations for all kids. But we should have high expectations for our district, which we do, right? We have high expectations of your superintendent, but having high expectations of yourselves and your team. Having those high expectations that we're gonna work as a cohesive team to reach that goal. Having those expectations and modeling that for your community, for your employees, and for your students. Because even if you don't see them, people are watching. People are listening. People are talking. So they see this and how it works. And sometimes they don't understand, right? That you had to go through a lot of things to get where you all can be respectful and work together and do all of these great things together. They might not have seen all of it, especially if they're newcomers or to this area. They might not have seen it, but it takes a lot of hard work to get to that place. And then taking time to reevaluate your team and see, is our team working the way it should be? You know, having that assessment of your team as well. You evaluate the superintendent, you should be evaluating yourselves as well. That's setting high expectations. And we do have an assessment for that you can take. So, conditions for success. This is where they put a lot of stuff under conditions, like a catch-all, conditions for success. What does that mean? Well, you are responsible. You have a huge responsibility to make sure you set up the conditions for success. So if you want to lower that dropout rate, when your superintendent comes and says, I need that additional counselor, you look at that and reevaluate, right? And not say, no, we can't afford it. No, we can't do it. You reevaluate and you try to set up the condition for success. If you want to improve your employee turnover, then you create employee-friendly policy and initiatives. Not just through the compensation piece, but there's other pieces that you can do. So if you're truly setting up your folks for conditions for success, then you're going to prioritize that when you set your budget. You prioritize what you value. So if you really value, for example, if you really value employee retention, recruitment, and reward, if that's the number one priority, then you need to back that up, right? If your number one priority is making sure of the mental health of your students, then that's going to show up by the folks you hire, therapeutic counselors, behavior specialists, whatever, and that's going to show up. So what you value, you prioritize and you set up the condition for success. So we don't say, oh, we value our teachers, but here, you're going to have all of these duties and we're not going to give you time off to plan and we're not going to. Is that setting up condition for success? We know the people that have been teachers. You need to have that environment in order to succeed. And then we have district accountability, and we talked a little bit about this, how before it had negative connotations to it. In the past, maybe not all of you were on the board when accountability was, not such a nice word. But it's so important to make sure that you're monitoring what you're doing. And that goes back to those formative assessments, formative evaluations that I was talking about for the superintendent, right? That when you are quarterly assessing your superintendent, and I don't mean formal assessment, because this is formative. Formative is just a check-in. Hey, Dr. Trujillo, these are our goals. How are you doing to reach those goals? What do you need from us to help support you in having the right trajectory to get to those goals? It's not, not meeting expectations, that's not what a formative assessment is. So you have to have that accountability. Well, if you're monitoring, if there's something wrong and you're tweaking your plan, how can we help that tweak? How can we help that plan? Because we got to set up those conditions for success. And you might say, well, I think I'm good, I think I moved some stuff around, but having that conversation and progress monitoring where you're at.
Ma'am, again, I want to make a comment. That district accountability, you said we have to question that. Well, we are very fortunate he presented to us and shares that with us. Then we say things that we never thought. Then we approve. Am I correct, board? In other words, the initiative starts, even though we don't have to do it, he does it for us.
Yes, he comes up with a plan, right?
And that's something that I really appreciate. That.
Well, and sometimes in that planning, we can rush through it
Yes.
and inadvertently set the board up. And so it requires work. It requires us to go in there and say, you know what? And that's when we change some of the data reporting so that when we're looking at a particular building, then we're looking at that one building. So that indirectly, a board member is going to ask an innocent question, and then we're comparing campuses. Well, we don't want to compare campuses because it's apples and oranges, but what does that campus look like to itself to a year ago, 3 years ago,
Yes.
5 years ago? And that way, the board feels empowered to really get a good sense of what's happening on that building. Because we can have a conversation where we're comparing apples and oranges, and indirectly, it belittles a group of teachers that have been working hard, or it missells a campus to the community because this campus is not this campus. But when you see a growth and you see that campus, you can celebrate so many wonderful things because this campus was here, but now because of its own group of kids, it's here. And that's in the accountability and having the conversation. It does require work because my team, as we were designing this, is used to doing it a certain way, but I want to make sure that as we're having the conversation, how can I guide the conversation that's happening up here so that the community doesn't feel like we're setting them up or setting up a board member? And that's what Coach Rashid is alluding to, is sometimes a little change, a little tweak requires a little bit of work, but next year it won't be as much work. But it's more informative to the board, and that way the community knows what we're looking at. And by the way, that led to some very interesting questions from the board, because they were able to go deeper on, is this curriculum working? Is tutoring working? What is it that we're needing here? So to Coach Rashid's point, that district accountability is critical. And we can't come up with it. We could have said, well, no, it's a COVID year. We don't know. But that's not an excuse, so, but yes, sir.
And fair doesn't mean equal, right? So like comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah.
You know, one mistake I had done was I looked at student achievement, right? We got our scores, and I looked at student achievement and where we were at. And I'm like, freaking out. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is all red. You know, this campus needs like extra support. We need extra help. And, you know, but I didn't look at domain 2. And that was unfair of me, right? Because I'm saying, hey, this campus is red. You need to intervene. You need to do this, you know, getting into something I wasn't supposed to. But it freaked me out that I was seeing this. So it's natural to think that. And then, you know, my superintendent said, okay, calm down. It's okay. Let's look at domain 2.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I was just focused on those initial student achievement piece and without looking at that second part, which is domain 2 and seeing that growth piece, right?
Yeah.
And luckily, I didn't do this in public, right? Where I would have made teachers from that campus feel bad if I would have said something in public like, let's intervene, they're doing something not right, because our scores have been like low, like for 3 years before COVID. So instead we had that conversation, and it's like, okay, you know this, Esperanza, there's another domain, so
Yeah.
let's look at that together and talk about that, and then I'm like, ooh, it's green. Oh, okay, we are growing from year to year. So, yes, and then the community would not understand that, right? Because they would have my mentality that I first had, it's all red. So it looks different on each campus. So it might be a 20 here, but they used to be a 5. So really,
Yeah.
that's huge growth. Okay, so district accountability. I'm laughing right now. Are you cold?
I'm cold.
Coach Potts is cold.
I'm cold. I'm cold. I'm not gonna lie, I'm
It's
cold.
almost like you put the blanket on the baby.
Okay.
I'm fixing to fan myself, but it could just be me.
I was trying to get your attention.
You're just kidding. Just kidding. He is cold, not me. He's acting like putting a blanket on the baby.
I saw him shivering. I will tell you the running joke at our board meetings is, oh no, bring a blanket because Esperanza wants it super cold all the time. And that's the way I function. And so it's like this in our board meetings. And I'm like, fine. And board members literally have blankets.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, thank you, because you love me.
Doing
Bring a blanket, bring a coat, even though it's 90 degrees outside. So, yeah, I love it cold. Sorry, that's my fault. I was really hot earlier. So it's all. But the community engagement piece is so critical because that is a board role. And so let me ask, how do you engage your community? Yes, sir.
Well, if you go out in this community, you don't have a choice but to engage with the community,
No,
okay? Doesn't matter where you go, to store, to church, to whatever.
All it takes is a trip
Um,
to the grocery store, right?
The way, I mean, most people know who we are in this community and that we're board members. They approach you, they want to know, well, what's the district doing? How's the superintendent doing? What do you think of the superintendent? Blah, 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 on and on and on. I try to educate them in terms of what we're doing within our board and within the school district of what we're trying to accomplish as a board for the community. One of the biggest things that they ask me about, all these changes that are going on in the fall and stuff, and so, as a board member, I have to educate myself to know that when I get those questions out there, I can answer them. And if I can't answer them, I can say, talk to the superintendent. He'll fill you in, he'll give you a good view of everything that we're doing and stuff. But I think the community engagement, not to listen to complaints, okay? Because if they want to complain, then I don't listen to complaints. I listen to them ask questions about what we're doing as a district and to improve the district. I don't want to hear, well, you guys did this and you guys, I don't listen to that. I won't exchange in that kind of conversation because I don't think it's, number one, it's not a good thing to do. Because they just, they say, well, the board member said this, the board member, I listen, explain, educate, and that's as much as I can do. Because they're going to have their own thoughts about whatever they are. I mean, I had to think today about, what'd you guys do about that? Did you already put in a newspaper about what happened to the librarian? I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I just been out of town. But I'm sure that the superintendent is taking the responsibilities to deal with it the way that he needs to do it. Because as a board member, that's not our responsibility. It's the superintendent's responsibility. So just educate them. I think if we do that, then they can't come back with all this stuff, well, you told me this, and you told me that, and then, well, the other board member told me this, and the other board member told me that. So I think we all need be on that same, I think we've all talked about that all the time. We need to be on the same page whenever we're saying things out in the community.
Yes. It
'Cause
goes
they-
back to that district ambassador piece, right? Sharing information with the community is so important, and educating them about what our role is. Because sometimes people will come to us, and if you're, sometimes when you're a novice board member, or even an experienced board member, sometimes it's easy to fall into that trap of being the savior, right? You're the problem solver. Oh, I just need to go to him and he'll solve my problems. He's a savior on this. So a lot of board members fall into that trap. And it's important to help them, your job is to help them navigate the system and refer them back to the chain of command and the person closest to that issue, right? Because if you have an issue with a football coach and you come directly to me and I get all in the weeds and try to fix that, then that football coach is losing credibility and doesn't even have the opportunity to correct something that they might not have known was wrong, right? You don't even provide for that opportunity, or the superintendent, to correct the issue. So it's so important, and I'm glad you use the word educate, because that is a huge piece of our role, is to help educate about what our role and responsibility is, so you don't get in the crosshairs of all of that. So that's good that you pointed that out.
We have, fortunately, we have everything recorded at our meetings.
Yeah.
We prepare them, I say, go look at the Facebook, you can see it. It's on the website. Everything you want to know concerning that agenda.
And educating your community, engaging them, because your job is to be responsive, right? To, if they give you feedback, listen. And thank you for sharing that with me. Doesn't mean you need to get into a big old dialogue, but being responsive to your community, educating them, making sure that they know how to navigate that system, because it's tricky. Yeah, I mean, employees don't know sometimes. Board members don't know sometimes. So we need to educate ourselves and others of what that role and responsibility is and what it looks like. And making sure that you are clear about what that is. Because it's like, I go to him and he fixes it, but I went to him and he told me to go talk to the principal. So you gotta be on the same page, making sure you all know your responsibility.
Well, I think what I've learned from being on the board and being a previous employee of NISD,
Yes.
that relationships with people you had prior to leaving NISD change. And I think Dr. Trujillo said it the best at one of the meetings, but it's not the same relationship anymore. And so I get phone calls from employees and things, and I said, no, that's not my role. You know, you need to talk to the superintendent. And I like that because it doesn't put me in a position of having to defend myself against them, but the superintendent can deal with them and talk to them. And I don't know if half the time, but I call Gabe, every time I get a phone call or something, I call him and I say, look, I'm just telling you, this is yours. You know, you take care of
You're
it.
it.
You're it.
And that's the key right there, is even though they engage with the community, it's not turning the community off.
Yes.
Because if we do turn the community off, then why did we put you in that seat?
Yeah.
And then becomes that.
Yeah.
So the key is to hear and direct, because sometimes it's just not knowing what to do with that information. And they have a relationship with a particular board member, and sometimes we can become misguided in the fact that they're asking us. It's almost like, I learned a long time ago, when my wife is asking me for advice, she's not asking me to solve it, okay? She wants me to hear it. And if I get into a fix-it mode, then she's gonna stop telling me something, because every time I come to her, I want, this is what you can do to fix it. So it's more listening and hearing, and then if she says, what do you think, then I can give her some direction, and that's simply as, maybe you need to go talk to the principal. Visit with the principal, and then follow that direction that's happening. When I hear from the board and they come to me, because that could still, and that's what's great, is they can give that to the community, but there's times whenever a board member finds it to be critical enough to say, I've already redirected this person, but Gabe, this is the question, I just want to make sure you're aware, this is what's being This is what's asked. I appreciate that because I want the board to know that what we practice with the team that I'm working with and as we dive in is the QBQ. The question behind the question. And because when they come to us, it's not the first question. We have to visit with them long enough because the real question is embedded in layers of onion. Because it's, they have to find the comfort of getting deeper in what their concern or their complaint is. And there's where we could get a little bit deeper, and it doesn't cause the board to fall on one side or the other. And my cautionary note is when we go into the fix-it mode, and because of legal or because something else stops it from happening, then the community can say, well, you said this, and now you follow the grace with that person, and that's not where the board needs to fall with. So, but I appreciate the fact that they do engage, but they also turn around and make a phone call and make sure to say, hey, just an FYI, this is what's going on. I don't have a dog in the fight. I just want to make sure you know that this is where we're at with this. So, but you're right. It doesn't matter where you go, and sometimes you don't even. They're looking at you. I was at Lowe's, and I knew the person in front of me was going to engage with me, and I just kept smiling, looking forward, and I was waiting, and then finally we engaged in a conversation because he picked up the courage for us to have a conversation. So sometimes it's not even that they know you, they just know of you, and they're trying to figure out, okay, now I'm going to talk to you. So, but small town, love it.
One morning I was at McDonald's. This person is a SFS professor, and I didn't recognize him. Him and his wife came in and looked at me and said, we just passed the bond. He said, you all took my money. I looked back and said, sir, we took yours and everybody else's, mine too. And, just all of a sudden start laughing and everything was sorted out and walked out. But respond to your education, sometimes educating a person, it stops false information to travel.
Exactly, and that's the biggest part. When you educate somebody about something, they can't go say, well, they spent $50,000 on this, and that's not what they told us, and that. But if they know the specifics, then they can't.
Most people who communicate with me, they learn about board operating procedures.
That's a great response right there.
It's all in there, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's important to not, you never want to blindside your superintendent, of course not.
No.
So giving them that information, hey, this is what I'm hearing, just want you to know. So they could be aware of what's happening in the community because they all are the ambassadors of the district. And it works both ways, with sharing information out to the community and then sharing information with your superintendent so he knows what to expect when he walks out those doors, right? Because nobody wants to be blindsided with that. Okay, so I told you I'm going to skip some slides.
Thank you.
Okay, real quick, and I won't give you homework after all, even though I'm itching to, but I actually am going to give you something to take home with you. Okay, so what is essential to learn? Just real quick, the framework for school board development is vision and goals, your systems and processes, your progress and accountability, advocacy, engagement, synergy, and teamwork. We covered that with your board roles, right? So they all are aligned with the roles of the board. And so what I'm going to give you, and you don't have to do it for homework, I was going to do this activity, but I'll let you all go early. I'm going to give you the framework for school board development. My card is on here as well. And that way, if you have any questions, you can contact me. I do remote coaching for free for our board members. And I talk to board members via Zoom all the time.
Thank you.
To talk about how do we deal with this situation? How do I deal with Robert's Rules of Order? How do I deal with X, Y, Z? So feel free to reach out. My email is on there, my cell phone's on there. No, my cell phone's not on this one. That's weird. It is my office phone number.
That 1-800 number or the 512?
That 512 is the office one, but I did have it, I'm gonna put it up here. It is actually.
While you're hunting, can I make a commercial?
Yes,
I took the Board Officer Academy under David,
yes.
And you don't have to be a board officer to take that class. And I think I took it right before COVID, and it was free. Is there
I think
expense
it's like
now?
$120.
Okay, but anyway, it is really empowering, and here's the deal. It's not just empowering you, it's taking all these people that you meet from all over the state. And Stephanie Looper, I met her in that class, she's over in Bullard, and she says, I was at the tennis match, and your tennis team was so polite. They were encouraging one another and so polite to everybody, and it's like, well, boy, I need to tell that to my board. And then our tennis coach just today, district boys champions. Wow. So there's a lot of things that are going on, but we can better educate ourselves to be better together.
That's one thing I regretted. We never, because of COVID, as an executive committee, we were never able to sit in the same room together and go through that training together and with other districts. And I think that would be hugely beneficial to have that opportunity.
Well,
And,
it's all virtual still.
It's all virtual.
right, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that maybe the next executive committee will have that opportunity, though, to do it together, face to face, like we're doing tonight, you know.
So,
It's coming back slowly.
yes, we'll have Journey to Excellence starts in July that I'll be doing for board officers or anybody who wants to know more about Robert's rules and teamwork and working with challenging folks. That's what I train on. And then also I have like 8 sessions at SLI, so feel free if you go to SLI in San Antonio or in Fort Worth. I will be there doing 8 sessions. So you can come to my class to learn a little bit more about board officers and working with your community are my sessions. And, ooh, we did not show it, sorry. For some reason, it didn't show it, but thank you for your time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to stick around. If not, feel free to enjoy your evening.
Can I ask you something
Yes, sir.
with the board here? Pam brings up a really good point. Can you speak to the value of, I just know I had the privilege of going to TASB. I was not, and I did not have a board. I was a deputy and assistant superintendent. We were walking along. And one of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed was watching a superintendent sitting at a table, not in town, sitting there enjoying the fellowship and talking about the trainings that they had gone to. And it was all his board was sitting with him. Or you watch a group of board members walking, because you don't get that. We don't have that. It's a quorum when you're doing this in town, but when you go to a training and you have that opportunity to go as a corporate group to go learn and develop each other. Can you talk a little bit about the value, and have you done that with your group where y'all go together? And it doesn't have to happen all the time, but that's one of the perks of the school district investing in the board to say, we're going to go together to San Antonio. We're not together, but we're going to go to San Antonio, we'll get together there, go to the training, and then come back. So can you speak a little bit, just to elaborate a little bit of what Pam's talking about, because that is something that we haven't had, and I see it coming. So can you speak to
So
that?
before, the mindset was, let's divvy up, there's so many great sessions, everybody goes to a different session, then we'll come back and share. That's not really effective. So
Yeah.
research shows that that is not an effective way to do things, because if you all don't see the same thing, it's hard to really have a conversation around that, right? And so we recommend that people go as a team to different sessions to learn about whatever their topic is of interest, because then you can really debrief about it. You can really wrap your mind around it and then have that buy-in. So our team, we all go to the same place. We'll all say, okay, this time we're picking San Antonio, and then we'll look at our sessions and we'll schedule it together. And sometimes there might be 3 people that are like, oh, I really want to go to that session on social contract, and we really want to go here. So sometimes we'll break it for 3 sometimes, but usually we'll go all together and learn, and our superintendent goes with us, which is awesome, because
That makes a
before,
lot of sense.
we would never see anybody, right? Everybody would just use it as not a learning opportunity. So we go together and then we're all excited and then we can have some really good conversation. Then we end up putting stuff on the agenda, right? On our agenda, for example, we saw a student advisory council that a district did. So we all had this buy-in and excitement and we put it on the agenda and then we adopted it. You know, and had people not been there for the whole thing, they might not know how important it is or how effective it could be. And they didn't get all that same information at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with that, and I know Leah Beth hasn't had the opportunity to attend one of these in-person
Not in
statewide.
person.
SOI last year did it where you had to like compete for
It's a
slots.
lottery.
Lottery.
This time it's a free-for-all.
Good. So that'll be that'll really be the first time since Dr. Trujillo has been here, and you're the first time for you, but those SLI is spectacular. So, and I can absolutely agree with you, doing it all together.
Mr. Freddy got us spoiled, man.
Yes.
He takes us to some nice eating places and
Yeah.
he's
There
got
you
us
go.
really spoiled.
Hey, that's the only time you can come together as a corporate group, and it is a thankless job because there's no pay to it. So it's great for the group to come together to fellowship, bond, develop, and really dive into everything is scripted. Everything we have that we go through in a board meeting is scripted, and you're following this is an opportunity to learn and engage and ask
Yes.
questions and really get to know each other. I
It has
think,
been wonderful for our
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
That was great.
I really
Well, right
do.
here was your one team, one goal, but for some reason it doesn't want to show.
oh,
So, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. One team, one goal.
yeah.
One team.
And
one
you're
goal.
all in it together.
Okay, thank you, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we officially, actually, thank you so much for your presentation. We do need a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Winslow. We have a second by Reverend Irvin. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much for your time tonight, guys.
Thank